Hey everyone, so in today's video we're going to be focusing on a beginner project that nearly every single programmer has made at least once. This project is the classic tic-tac-toe game. Here we're going to make a tic-tac-toe game that runs in the actual Python console and even make a very basic AI bot at the end. This video should reinforce and test a lot of those beginner skills that you need to work on before you start working on more advanced projects. So, if you like this code project showcase, I have many more advanced projects ready to be shown off. Okay, so let's get right into the code. So, before you start any sort of project, and especially before you start any projects at larger scales, you want to think about what features do I need to create to make this functional. So with tic-tac-toe, what do we need to do? Well, first, we should probably create some sort of game board. So maybe our first task should be printing the game board. Then after that, we want to take some sort of player input and then actually put that onto the board. So take player input. Then after that, we want to check to see if that player input resulted in a win or a tie. So check for win or tie. Then after that, we're going to want to switch the player. And then we want to check to see if that player won on their move. So we're going to check for win or tie again. So with all that said, we can just loop through all of this continuously, and we should have a working tic-tac-toe game. All right, so what are we going to need to do first? Before we start off, I want to set some global variables that are going to help us a little bit later. So I think our first global variable is actually going to be our board piece, right? And for this board, we're going to be creating a list. So let's create this list called board, and we're going to set it equal to a 3x3 square of dashes. Whoops, I'm going to put that there. Then I'm going to go down here. And then one more list. Alright, so here we have our game board. Alright, and we're going to set one more global variable, and we're going to set it equal to the current player. Alright, so let's initialize this variable with the string x. So we're going to start off every game with player x. Alright, we're going to do two more variables. The first one of those is going to be the winner variable, and we're going to initialize this first with no value, right? Because we don't have any value of winner. And then once we start making that game loop, we can actually tell the computer that when the winner equals XO, or if it's a tie, to actually break out of that loop. And then this loop is going to be controlled by our last global variable, which is the game running variable. And we're going to set that equal to true to start it off. All right, so now let's try to make a function to print this game board, and let's make it in a form that is a little easier for a user to read. All right, so let's go down here and make our first function, and we're going to call it defining print board. And this function is going to take in one argument, which is actually the board. All right, so making this, all we're going to have to do is print each row of the board. All right, so let's go in and do three separate print statements. So we're going to do board bracket 0, and then I'm going to put a little bit of a space in between, and I'm going to do that little pipe there just so it resembles the tic-tac-toe board a little bit more. All right, we're going to do the same thing again, and then board bracket 2. All right, on the next line, we're going to print board bracket 3 plus the pipe plus board bracket 2 plus the pipe plus board bracket 5. I'm going to go back and fix that because that shouldn't be a 2. It should be a 4. All right, and then I'm actually going to copy this line down to the next one just to speed things up a little bit, and we're going to hit it with 6, 7, and 8. All right, so Well, if we actually call this function, let's call print board and let's pass in board. If we actually run it over here, all right, we got this board right here. All right, so you guys get the idea. We got the 3x3 square, but let's take this one step further. All right, how about inside of each, after each one of these print statements, we just add a horizontal row of dashes just to make it look a little bit better. So we can say print, and then let's just kind of eyeball it, maybe like 8. Maybe that'll work. We'll kind of just play around with it and see how many dashes is the correct amount of dashes. Alright, now let's run it again. Let's add like 2 more dashes. And then perfect. I think that's good enough. Good enough for me. Alright, so now that we have that print board function down, I think we're ready to take the next step and take some sort of player input. So let's make that function. Alright, define player input, and that also is going to take in one argument, and we're going to call it board just for the sake of code readability. And I think the easiest way to take player input for a tic-tac-toe game that is run in the console is to just use the inbuilt Python function input. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to ask the user to select a number 1 through 9, and each number is going to correspond with a section on the game board. So let's go up here. 1 would be right here, 2 right here, 9 down here. You guys get the idea. Alright, so let's create a variable. Let's call it imp, and then we're going to set it equal to the input function, and then we're going to prompt the user to enter a number 1 through 9. Alright, but if you guys know anything about this input function, the native Python input function is it always returns a string value. Alright, but if we're going to want to work with the indexes in this board, we're going to want that in the form of an integer. But quick fix for that, we can just tap into the int conversion. So now we got a number 1 through 9 from the user. Alright, so what we're going to do is we need to take this input and we need to check to see if it is a valid position on the board, meaning that it is a number 1 through 9 and it's also a position that is not occupied by the other player. So what we can do is we can say if input is greater than or equal to 1 and input is less than or equal to 9 and board bracket inp minus 1 equals a dash, then what we can do is set the board bracket input minus 1 equal to that current player variable that we have above. So let's take a look at what I just wrote here. These first two expressions make sure that the input is a valid number 1 through 9. Then this one right here checks to see that at the position in the board that the player inputted, that there's a dash there, meaning that no player has gone there yet. And then down here, we set that position equal to the current player. So then what we can also do is say, let's say that whatever input in there was invalid for whatever reason. We can just tell the user, oops, player is already in that spot, or whatever message you wanted to say there. Alright, so how about we go down here and we just start that game loop and we can start seeing all these parts work together. So let's create a while loop and say while the game is running, we're going to first print board and then pass in the board, and then we're going to have the player input and we're going to pass in the board there as well. So when we run this, we can enter number 1 through 9. Let's just put 3. And now we got the X there. And let's put 5. Ooh. And then we can put 6. Right? But we're just going to keep going on and on. We don't have a switching player. We can't check it. Blah, blah, blah. Alright? So we're in an endless loop here. So I'm just going to close out of that. Alright. So now we can move on for the next section, which is checking for win or a tie. So you guys know tic-tac-toe. You know that there's the 3 ways to win. You can win horizontally, you can win up and down, or you can win diagonally. All right, so we're going to need to check each one of those conditions. Okay, so let's check the horizontal first. So we're going to create a function called check horizontal. All right, and we're going to put in the board here. And we're also going to tap into one of the global variables we made earlier, which is that winner variable, right? Because we're going to, after all, we're checking to see if there's a winner. So we're going to put in global winner. This global keyword basically says that we're going to, if we make changes to the winner variable within the scope of this function, the winner variable changes within the scope of the entire file. Now, if you guys don't understand that, then here's a concept. So when every single variable you make in Python has a certain scope to it, right? If you create a variable, if you define a variable within a function, that variable is valid for everything within that function. And then if you make a variable that is valid for everything in the file, like we did up here, we call those global variables, right? Now, if we want to modify a variable like that within a function, we can just use the global keyword and the computer will know that, hey, we want to make changes to the global variables. All right, so now that we've said this, we can check the horizontals, right? So we're just going to do that with a few if statements. So we can say if board bracket 0 equals board bracket 1, which equals board bracket 2, and board bracket 1 does not equal a dash. Right? Going over what I just did there, we just checked that if the board at each one of these positions are equal to each other and it does not equal this, then we know that whatever the player is there must be the winner. So we can set that winner equal to whatever players at these positions. So we can just say winner equals board bracket 0. You could say winner equals board bracket 1 or winner equals board bracket 2. It doesn't matter because all these values are equal. Okay, and what we're also going to do here is return true. Okay, this is going to come in handy later when we're actually calling all these functions together to check for different conditions, right? And if something returns true, then we can do if statements with the function, so that we can say if check horizontal is true, then we can break out of the game loop or something like that, right? So now let's do elif board bracket 3 equals board bracket 4 equals board bracket 5, and board bracket 3 does not equal a dash, winner equals board bracket 3, and we can return true again. And then for the last one, we can do elif board bracket 6 equals board bracket 7, which equals board bracket 8, and board bracket 6 does not equal a dash. All right. And then we're going to do the same thing, set winner equal to board bracket 6, and we're going to return true. All right, so we got the first one of these done. Okay, so now we got to move on and we got to check the rows. Okay, so let's define a new function, again, called check row, and we're also going to pass in one argument to it, board. We're going to tap into that global winner variable, and then now we're going to do the if statements again. So if board bracket 0 equals, and then for the rows, the next one would be board bracket 3, and the next one would be board bracket 6. They go by 3 each time, and then board bracket 0 does not equal. Then we can set the winner equal to any one of these, and then we can return true again. And then I'm gonna copy this right here. So then I'm going to hit it with the elif and then paste that in. And then I'm going to change these a little bit. So this one would be the next position, which would be 1. And then this would be a 4. And then this would be a 7. And this would just be 1. And then we're going to set the winner equal to the 1, and then we're going to do elif again. We're going to copy that down. We can do 0, 1, 2, 5, then 8, and then back down to 2 for here, and then we can do 2. Okay, so now that we have the check row, we have the check horizontal. This one will be a little bit shorter because all we have to do is check the 2 horizontals, right? Oh, not check, check diagonal. That's what I meant to say. So we can say check diag. We can set it equal, or pass in the board argument. Sorry, and then tap into that global winner variable, and then all we got to do is say if board bracket 0 equals board bracket 4, which equals board bracket 8. That's not on board. And board bracket 0 does not equal dash winner equals board bracket 0 return true. And then elif board bracket 2 equals board bracket 4, which equals board bracket 6, and board bracket 2 does not equal a dash. Then winner equals board bracket 2 and returning true. Okay, so now that we got all 3 of these functions, we should be able to check for any sort of if any player wins, right? But now let's check to see if there's a tie, and this is very, very easy to implement. Okay, so let's say check tie and pass in board, and then all we have to do is one conditional statement. Okay, so now we can say if that dash is not in the board, then all we have to do is we can print out that game board again, right? And then we can just tell the user that it's a tie. And then what we can do is also we can tap into that game running variable, and then we can set game running equal to false. All right, so all we got to do is, since it's a list, we can check to see if that list contains this value, and if it doesn't, then we know that all the positions are taken up and there's not any winner, so there must be a tie. Okay, so now that we've done this, we are ready to switch the player. Okay, so let's come down here and make that new function, switch player. Okay, we don't need to pass any arguments into this because we're not going to be making any modifications to the board, and this will be very easy to do. So let's bring in that current player global variable, and all we got to do is say if the current player double equal signs x, then we can set the current player equal to 2O. So notice what I did here. The double equal sign for the Boolean expression, checking to see if that current player at this moment is equal to x. And if that's so, then we're reassigning that value to 2O with the single equal sign. Okay? And then in any other case, else, we can assign the current player equal to x. Okay? So, we're getting very close to finishing this. Okay, so now that we have created all these functions to check to see if there's a winner, we're going to create one more master function just so we don't have to type all of these into the game running variable. Alright, so let's come down here and let's say define check for win. Alright, and then we're going to pass in all these things, right? So remember when I said above that we're going to use these return true methods or return true values later? So what we can do is we can say if check diagonals or check horizontals or check row. And then we're going to pass in the board to all of these. And we're also going to pass in the board up to here. Actually, no, we don't need to do that up there. We're going to come down here, and we're going to say print. And then we're going to utilize an F string here. For those of you who don't know F strings, it's just a faster way to type in strings. Instead of having to do that plus some other thing, right? You can just do an F string and say, okay, the winner is, and then put within what in curly brackets whatever you want to do, and we can tap into the winner. Okay, and then what we can also do is, now that we have this made, we can come down to our game loop and we can say we can take the player input and then we can check win, and then we can check tie, and then we can actually call that switch player method. And then we're going to pass in the board for that. Okay, so now when we actually run this, we can enter number 1. Okay, now the next step is O, next step is X. Okay, now we can go down and we can say 5, 6, and then 8, and then say, okay, here it is, the winner is O. Alright, so now let's create some sort of ability for the computer to make some moves so we don't have to continue to go against ourselves. Okay, so let's make a new function, and we're going to come down here and create a computer. Okay, so let's define this function, computer, and what we're going to actually do is pass in the board variable again, but we're going to actually import a Python module that you guys should become very familiar with as the more you use Python, and that is the random module. Okay, so this bot may not be very good at the game, but at least it's going to be able to make a move. Okay, so let's just create a loop for whenever the computer is up to make a move. And we want to create a loop because if we're using something random, then it might take a couple random iterations for it to find a spot on the board that's not already taken by another player. Okay, and let's make the O the bot for us. Okay, so let's say while the player current player is equal to O, we're going to tap into that random module and we're going to generate a random number 0 to 8. Okay, because those correspond to different spots on our board. So let's create a variable called position. Okay, and we're going to set it equal to random.randsInt, and then we're going to do it from 0 to 8. And then now we're going to check to see if that position on the board is already occupied. But an easy way to do this is we can just check to see if the board bracket position equals a dash. Then we know that no one has gone there yet. And then we can set board bracket position equal to O. Okay? And after this happens, all we got to do is just switch the player again. Alright, so now if we go down here, we have switch player, and then we can call the computer again down here, and then after the computer goes, what do we have to do? Check for win or tie again. So check for win, and then check for tie. Okay, so now let's run this, and we should have a pretty good project. So let's enter a number 1. Oh, the player made a move down there. The O made a move down there. 2. Uh-oh, it might beat me. There we go. The winner is X. And there you have it, guys. There is our tic-tac-toe game up and running. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to help get my channel out there. And then also, if you like this type of video, let me know down in the comments if you want to see more advanced tutorials. And I can also make a tic-tac-toe game that actually has an intelligent AI bot that you can go against. So, if you guys want to see that advanced tutorial, let me know. Also, if you guys want to see more advanced projects, be sure to stay tuned. Also, I'm going to have a link to this GitHub page in the description, so if you guys want to go and compare this to the code, then compare your code to mine, then go ahead and click it down there. But that's going to be it for me. Thanks, guys.